program is called Operation Pollination. And this is a 7th area of focus project that has been adopted by Rotary's SRAG. I'll talk about SRAG in a minute. But as good Rotarians, you know that recently Rotary adopted supporting the environment, protecting the environment as a 7th area of focus. And if you're looking for a 7th area of focus project for your club to get involved in, this is a very easy one. In fact, your district, 7910, has already signed a pollinator resolution, which we'll talk about during today's program. And so you're already part of this. So all your club would have to do is sign a pledge and decide what you want to do. So I don't do this alone. I work with 3 past district governors. Here's 2 of them, Marlene and Judy. You'll see Tina in a little bit. But we are recruiting districts and clubs to get involved with this 7th area of focus project. As was mentioned, I began my career at Minuteman, and I gave many, many interpretive presentations down at the Old North Bridge. Probably could still pull it out from my memory, but I've always loved Ralph Waldo Emerson's poem, so I wanted to put it up on the screen today. So that's where I began my career. Where I began my Rotary service was at the Great Smoky Mountains in Tennessee, when I was a park ranger there back in the late 90s. I transferred to Yosemite National Park and ultimately became president of the Yosemite Valley Rotary Club during Rotary's centennial year, for those who were around in 2005 and were Rotarians. And today I'm a member of what's called the Paths and Pollinators Committee out of District 5970 in Northeast Iowa. I'm speaking to you, by the way, from Minnesota today. I'm beaming in from Minnesota. I'm also a member of Rotary's SRAG, or the Environmental Sustainability Rotary Action Group. You know that Rotary has all these communities of practice, these groups. If you're into disease prevention and control, you can join a Rotary Action Group on that. If you're into just about anything, you can join a Rotary Action Group. There's a whole list of them up on the website. But SRAG is the one that deals with environmental sustainability, and that's what Operation Pollination is about. So as we go into today's program, I want you to just be thinking about these beautiful words. The real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. But with those new eyes, nobody wants to see this. Pollinators are responsible for much of the food that we eat. I know Rotarians like to eat. Those of us on the Zoom are probably missing those Rotary lunches, or not, I don't know. But pollinators provide these free ecological services. An astounding 85% of the world's plants, the reproductive success of 85% of the world's plants depends on the free ecological services of pollinators. But since the 1970s, if you can believe this, more than 40% of pollinators have disappeared from the face of the earth worldwide in a mere 50 years. As Rotarians, we should be thinking, what type of world are we leaving our children? The decline of pollinators is a global environmental crisis, one that we don't really see too much. But when it happens, we're going to know about it, because as I said, plant life on Earth depends on pollinators, and we depend on plants. Now, this photograph of the planet gives you a clue to the quiz I'm about to give you. So look at the photograph closely, and then tell me, what is this? Again, I'll show you the photograph. And then any guesses at what this might be?
Pine trees.
It is. It's some type of evergreen tree, and it's on a mountaintop in Mexico. That's the clue there, in Mexico. The monarch butterflies that are flying through Massachusetts right now are heading for this mountaintop. And that rust color on the trees is not a blister rust or something like that. It's this. Millions and millions of monarch butterflies. It's unbelievable. It's one of nature's most phenomenal animal migrations. Now, while this photograph is somewhat deceiving because it makes it look like there's lots of monarch butterflies, and there still are, but an incredible 90% of monarchs have declined since the 1990s. Remember how I said pollinators overall, 40% over the past 50 years? Monarchs, it's 90% since the 1990s. And I only mention the monarch because it is such an iconic pollinator species that we all remember from our childhood. But monarchs are certainly not the only pollinators. Bees, wasps, flies, beetles, other butterflies, moths, these are all pollinators, as is this. Any guess at what this is? This is a robotic bee. I took this photo from the Wall Street Journal. I saw it a couple weeks ago. This is what they're using in parts of Australia to pollinate tomatoes. Already using robotic bees because their native bees have disappeared. By the way, if you have $10,000, you can have one of these too. Under current research and development, $10,000 a pop for that little guy. So because of this pollinator decline, Operation Pollination was conceived and is being implemented in places across the United States, and Rotary is a leader on this project. So what is Operation Pollination? It's not a prescription. It doesn't tell you what to do. It's basically a framework. It's a very easy 3-step framework. It helps you recruit a diverse array of organizational partners who want to engage in habitat restoration and education about pollinators. It began in Minnesota and Wisconsin, where I live. That's me in the center there with the jacket on, next to the guy in the white. It began in the St. Croix Valley of Minnesota and Wisconsin back in 2015. We invited these 3 federal land management agencies, invited everyone, not-for-profits, for-profits, government, non-government, small, big, it didn't matter. We invited you to participate in a pollinator project for all. COVID-19 really made this project nosedive until August of 2020, when SRAG adopted the project and immediately developed a website for the project, operationpollination.net. You can learn of the 3 easy steps I'm going to tell you about on this website. SRAG also was responsible for getting an article in Rotary Magazine. I know you all get Rotary Magazine monthly. This is from the October 2020 issue. If any of you have that knocking around your house, you might want to look up October 2020. There's a full article in there about Operation Pollination. It's called The Butterfly Effect. And now I'll tell you what the nuts and bolts of Operation Pollination is. And it's really simple. These 3 easy steps. 1, you sign a pollinator resolution. I already mentioned to you that District 7910, your district, has already signed a pollinator resolution. You were one of the first districts in the United States to do so, by the way. Congratulations. Then you sign a pollinator pledge form. That's what your club would do if you decide to engage in this. And then you'd not only decide on what you're going to do as a club, but you'd recruit others to do things too. So here is a resolution that is signed. This is not your district's, But as I mentioned, District 7910 has already signed a similar resolution. Sue Peghini, your environmental chair for your district, at the Newton Club. She is the one that was the driver on this, by the way. Then, and you can get this from Sue Peghini, you would sign a pollinator pledge form. Sue can send you a pledge form if you're interested. Again, open to everyone, large, small, for-profit, not-for-profit. Not only would you sign a pledge form, but using the incredible power of Rotarians as networkers, you would ask other organizations in your community to also sign. And then the district would collect all these organizations and put them on the back of their resolution. This is the one from the St. Croix Valley where I live back in 2015. This one now has 125 names on it, but this is when it was first. It had 70 names on it. You can see there all the organizations. It's all over the board. So again, 3 easy steps. Resolution, done. Pledge form, something you might want to consider doing. Put the names on the back of your pledge, your resolution. So SRAG adopted this project. We are now recruiting Rotarians across the United States, Canada, and Mexico to engage. Also other countries around the world. You'll see that in a minute. And some districts are signing. We have 8 districts already signed up. Rotary District 6450, which was the birthplace of Rotary. This is the district where Paul Harris is from. I know you know that name. Paul Harris, this is his district. Chicago 1 is located here. They signed a resolution, and now they are recruiting their 62 clubs, over 2,000 Rotarians, to engage in habitat restoration and education activities. Wonderful. District governors, club presidents, all over are starting to sign. We even now have a couple of clubs overseas in England, Scotland, and Mexico have signed. And we're not stopping with those 3 countries. We're trying to expand this to other countries around the world as well. I'm working on that right now with other SRAG chapters. National heritage areas around the country. That's the group of organizations I work with, national heritage areas. They've signed on to Operation Pollination. And you actually have a couple of national heritage areas up in your neck of the woods. By the way, if you look to the far left of this map, that little orange dot, that's where I'm speaking to you from. If you look where that orange arrow goes to, it points towards Freedom's Way National Heritage Area in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. And Bedford is actually located within Freedom's Way National Heritage Area. They have not signed a pollinator resolution yet. The Blackstone River Valley, which is out by Worcester in central Massachusetts, they have signed a resolution. But if your club was very interested in partnering with any of these, just let me know. By the way, I should say that just because we're meeting here for a couple of minutes today, you know, if you want to contact me for any reason, Dawn has my email. By all means, please contact me. So projects, what can a club do? As I mentioned, Operation Pollination does not tell you what you can do. It's a framework, not a prescription. But here's a community out on Eastern Long Island, New York, where I'm from. They took their community center and they planted it in milkweed. Milkweed, by the way, is the plant that is essential for monarchs. No milkweed, no monarchs. But as important as it is for organizations to sign the pollinator pledge and get involved in pollinator restoration, you as individuals, and I'm sure many of you are already doing this, you as individuals can do something in your own yard, and never forget the incredible power of the one to do something. Pollinators unites us all. This is something that we all have in common. No matter where in the world you're from, except Antarctica, pollinators are everywhere. And as I mentioned early on, it's really, their decline is a global issue. And I know that Rotary loves to tackle global challenges, and pollinator health is a global challenge. Now, what can your club do? If you need help, and Mr. Google, by the way, can give you lots of ideas. But if you need help, one of my other partners, past District Governor Tina Hall, she does a program on how to succeed in a pollinator project. So if you want to invite her to your club, by all means, I know that Tina would enjoy joining your club as well, and I'd speak to her about it. So if your club wants to help pollinators, what can you do in this 7th area of focus? Let me just go through the steps. Your club obviously selects a project champion. You sign a resolution. As I mentioned, it's already done at the district level for you. And then you would sign a pollinator pledge form. Consider inviting past District Governor Tina Hall to speak to you. She can give you ideas on what to do. But you can also just go ahead and decide on a project and plan it out. It doesn't have to be complicated, by the way. Then you would implement your project and take care of it. Take photos, by the way, because I'd love to get your photos. I'd love to have some photos from Massachusetts on a pollinator project. And let us know what you do. And I want you to know that the Environmental Sustainability Rotary Action Group, they're currently working on a map so you can easily place your projects. So Rotary can easily place their projects on this map. So that's a possibility in the near future as well. So I want to leave time for questions. So thank you, Bedford, for inviting me. Dawn, thank you for inviting me to come speak to your group today. Thank you for your leadership in supporting this cause from your district level, potentially at your club level, and for all the things that you do. Remember, this is the end goal. Pollinators equals food security equals national security. When we go into our supermarkets, this is what we want to see. And I'll leave you with this quote. The end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. And that's what Operation Pollination is. So you, as Rotarians, know how important Bedford is to the health of pollinators locally and globally. And so you can help tell other people how important their place is as well. So thank you again for inviting me. I'll stop sharing my screen now and we'll open it up to some questions if you have any.
Thank you so much, Chris. I'm sure we have tons of questions. I know I have questions.
I know I have a question.
Yeah.
So Chris, I have been, abreast of this problem for quite a while. And
yes.
I've noticed the decline of, pollinators for such a long time that last year I converted about 90% of my yard to all pollinator plants. And so I put in pollinator gardens and pollinator plants only. And the last couple of years, I haven't seen any increase in pollinators because I said in the chat box, my garden this year, I barely got anything out of it. And I have all these pollinator plants, I'm getting flowers like crazy, but nothing being attracted to the flowers to do the pollination. I had to pollinate my own corn myself this year. So I'm wondering what else can I do, to increase. I mean, I can't put beehives on my property because I'm in the city and I'm too close and I don't have the land. But, what else can I do to increase, the attraction of pollinators?
I was going to say something wise like pray, but I won't say something wise. First off, I want to say bravo to you. And I want to bring you, if you don't already know about Doug Tallamy's website, I want to refer you to Doug Tallamy. He's an entomologist from the University of Delaware, but he has come up with this idea called Homegrown National Park. And that's really what you've done. You've created a little park at your home. So go check out Homegrown National Park. Doug proposes that people not mow their lawns so much. I want to tell you a little statistic that I got from one of Doug's books. He writes some great books. If you were to take all the lawn, and I'll get to your question, by the way. If you were to take all the lawns in the United States and combine them, those lawns exceed the size of New England. So every week, people are out there with their mowers, guzzling fossil fuels, polluting the air, cutting their lawns to make them sterile environments for pollinators. As much as your yard has not attracted pollinators, given what you've done, think about a lawn. A lawn is basically a desert to pollinators. It does nothing for pollinators. Does it look good? Yes. Looks good in an English countryside or around an English castle. I mow my lawn too, by the way, but I don't look. I use a push mower. I don't know what to tell you about attracting pollinators, except are they native plants that you planted? They are. Well, and I mentioned natives because it's important to plant natives, because our pollinators here in North America, they evolved with our native plants. And so if you plant some plant from some other country, as nice as they might look, it is possible that our pollinators won't go to them. It is possible. So try to plant, our pollinators certainly won't use them for reproduction purposes. They may sip nectar if it's a nectar-bearing plant, but they won't use them for reproduction. They won't lay their eggs on them because they don't know what that plant is. They have not evolved with it. So this is kind of disheartening what you're saying about how you don't see a lot of pollinators. Are you getting flowers or fruit at the appropriate time of year?
I'm getting some flowers. It's funny because the nursery that's near my house has a whole pollinator native section. So I kind of basically, whatever was in that section, I bought and planted. Some of the flowers actually haven't flowered. Other ones have. But like my squash this year, I got tons of squash flowers. I didn't get one squash out of it. My eggplant, I got tons of flowers. I got one eggplant out of 4 plants. And my peppers are the same way. I'm getting like 1 pepper per plant, tons of flowers. So it's very hit or miss. And I'm watering, and I'm attracting more. And I planted bee gardens near the garden, all kinds of things, trying to attract them to the garden. And it hasn't worked.
That is dire. I'm sorry to hear this. I'm going to have to do some research on that. If you send my email address is chris_stein@nps.gov. If you send me a message, I'll do some research on that. But thank you for telling us about your situation. Any other questions?
Yeah, I think John has a question. Do you want to maybe come closer to the microphone so we can,
Sure.
although you project, I know that.
Speak slowly.
He's very used to speaking.
Yeah. Hello. No, thank you for an excellent presentation. I love monarch butterflies. A little disappointed you didn't talk about our favorite pollinators in our family, which are bats. One of the great things that we can do is to put bat houses up on our property, because not only do they pollinate, they eat thousands upon thousands of mosquitoes every night. They they're like potato chips for bats. So I highly encourage not only growing a lot of pollination plants, but bat-oriented plants, and put up little mansions for those cute little guys to enjoy.
Thank you, John. Even though it says Paula on the screen, I know you're not Paula. There's Paula. Yeah, I'm sorry for not mentioning bats. Some bats are pollinators. Most bats that you have there in the Northeast are not pollinators. They're insectivorous bats, as you mentioned. They eat insects. By the way, not only do they eat mosquitoes, but they also eat beneficial pollinators as well. And that's okay. That's part of nature. Dawn mentioned in my introduction that one of my favorite parks I worked at was the National Park of American Samoa, which, by the way, is the photo on my wall behind me. But there we had tropical fruit bats with 3-foot wingspans that flew around during the day, and they were fruit-eating bats. They were fruit bats. So yes, bats in some parts of the world are extremely important pollinators. So thanks for mentioning that.
So Chris, I'm just wondering if there are projects that, we're going into fall now and winter. Like, are there things we can do? Well, like when I think of pollination, I think of like you're planting spring and summer type of things, but what can we do in the fall and the winter?
That's a good question, Paula. And I would direct you to, and I'll try to find out a website for you, Paula, where you can see a number of opportunities. One of the things that I do in the fall is I collect milkweed seed. This is the time of year when those pods on common milkweed that look like something from another planet open up, and their seeds have a lot of fluff on them. This is a time to collect those pods, put them in a bag, shake it out. The seeds will drop off of that fluff, and then you can have those seeds for the spring when you can plant seeds. But seed, by the way, is very expensive. And it's very expensive because it takes a great amount of labor to collect those seeds. It's always, you can educate others about pollinators. This is a time of year where your club can plan to do a spring project. We all know that time flies, and so it's not too early to start talking about a spring project. I would get a pledge form from Sue Pecchini, your environmental chair for District 7910. I would discuss as a club, maybe amongst your board, what you possibly want to do if you want to do this easy 7th area of focus project, and then plan it for the spring. I recently put out an inquiry to all the clubs that I spoke to this past year, and it's really pretty amazing what they've done collectively. And some of them that I've spoke to in the latter part of the year, they're now planning. So they haven't done their projects either. So that's exactly what they're doing, Paul. They're planning for next year. Never too early to start that planning.
Sounds good. All right, Ralph has a question. He's gonna, so Ralph is coming, even though it'll say Paula, it's gonna be Ralph.
Chris,
By the way, I just wanted to say, Terry, congratulations getting your daughters through college. I have two daughters, one in high school, one in middle school, and I wish I was in your shoes.
Thanks.
Terry was in my 5th grade class and I was his teacher, so he's doing a great job.
Wow.
My comment, we're familiar with European honeybees, and they're the ones that are all around here that we're aware of. But the ones that usually bite us are the solitary bees that surprise us all over the place. They must be big on pollinating too, and how can we promote solitary bee regeneration or protection or whatever else?
Okay, now, is your question about the solitary bees that bite you?
No, just in general, that's another whole range of bees that we don't keep in mind.
Okay, so as was mentioned, the bee that we rely upon to pollinate our agricultural crops is the European honeybee. It's actually a non-native species, and generally I'd be up here saying no. we want to promote natives, but we also do want to promote the European honeybee because it is essential for our agricultural crops. There are more than 3,000 different native bee species in the United States, more than 3,000. And that's just in the United States. They're generally, as was mentioned, are solitary nesters. They're not social nesters in hives like the honeybee. And so generally, we're not even aware of them, quite frankly. But I would, if you have bare patches of soil in your yard, you might want to consider leaving those patches bare if they're not too unsightly, because that can provide habitat for your solitary bees. It's also not unusual to leave a wood pile or a chip pile in your yard, because that can also be a refuge for bees and other pollinators. They can spend the winter, they can overwinter in places like that. So I don't know if you want me to do more research on that, but solitary bees are very important. But as was mentioned, our primary pollinator bee species is the non-native European honeybee.
All right, thank you.